What if one single book could completely change the way you think about success, discipline, money, and life?
I mean, it sounds like a massive promise, right? But that is exactly what we are unpacking today.
Welcome back to Read Less. In today's deep dive, you are about to discover some of the most powerful lessons ever written about wealth.
Yeah, we are doing a full immersive audiobook summary and breakdown, and the goal here is to really get into the real meaning of financial discipline.
Exactly. We are looking at how successful people think differently, how your daily habits literally shape your future, and how to overcome that deep fear and laziness that holds so many of us back.
Right. And most importantly, we are going to show you how to level up your life step by step using the core concepts from Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad's Cash Flow Quadrant.
So if you enjoy powerful audiobook summaries like this, make sure to subscribe to Read Less. Let's just jump right into it. Why do you work harder every single year but somehow feel like you are, constantly losing ground?
Yeah, that is the universal question, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
You get the promotion, you get the 4% annual raise, you take on more responsibilities at work, and yet by the end of the month, your bank account looks completely identical to the way it did 5 years ago.
It is like running on a treadmill.
Exactly. You are running faster and faster just to avoid getting spit off the back. Meanwhile, you look around and see someone else who just seems to be effortlessly gliding through life.
Right. They pay legally zero in taxes, they work half the hours you do, and their wealth is just exploding.
It is enough to make you feel like the game is entirely rigged. What do they know that the rest of us just don't?
Well, the game isn't necessarily rigged, but it is operating on a set of rules that the vast majority of the population has simply never been taught.
Right.
We are culturally conditioned to believe that increased physical or mental effort linearly correlates with increased wealth. The harder you sweat, the more you make.
Which just isn't true.
No, the reality of our global financial systems tells a completely different story. I mean, if hard work alone created immense wealth, every construction worker and night shift nurse would be a billionaire.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Which brings us to the core of what we are unpacking in this summary today. We are looking at a blueprint for escaping that exact treadmill.
Right. Our mission today is to map out the 4 completely distinct financial worlds that human beings inhabit. We are going to decode the secret language of money.
And if you are listening to this right now, maybe on your commute, dreading the moment you have to clock in, our goal is to give you the mental framework to stop hauling buckets of water and start building pipelines.
That imagery, the buckets versus pipelines, is really the perfect entry point. It captures the entire philosophical shift from active labor to passive systems.
Yeah, I love that story.
To really grasp why some people are trapped and others are free, we have to look at the foundational parable the source material uses to set the stage.
Let's lay this out, because when I first read this story, it honestly hit me like a ton of bricks. So imagine a quaint little village.
Okay.
It is an idyllic place to live, except for one massive existential problem. They have absolutely no water supply unless it rains.
Yeah, that is a huge problem.
Right. So the village elders put out a contract bid. They need someone to deliver fresh water to the town square every single day. And 2 guys step up, Ed and Bill.
And the village decides to hire both of them.
Exactly. They figure a little free market competition will keep the prices low and the quality high.
Which is how most economies naturally function.
Yeah.
But the way Ed and Bill approach this identical problem reveals the 2 fundamentally opposed ways that humans approach wealth generation.
Yeah, so Ed hits the ground running. He doesn't waste a single second. He immediately goes to the hardware store, buys 2 massive, heavy, galvanized steel buckets, and starts jogging back and forth to a freshwater lake a mile away.
Just brutal physical labor.
Oh, absolutely. He is up before dawn. He is physically hauling water until dusk, emptying these buckets into a large concrete holding tank in the village.
Right.
But he is making money on day 1.
Right. He is thrilled.
He feels incredibly productive. It is back-breaking, grueling physical labor, but every time he dumps a bucket, he gets handed cash.
Ed is basically experiencing the ultimate dopamine hit of immediate gratification. He sees a direct, undeniable correlation between his physical sweat, his expended time, and his income.
Yeah.
In his mind, he has solved the problem and completely secured his financial future.
But then we look at Bill, and Bill actually vanishes. He signs the contract and just disappears for 6 solid months.
Which Ed must have loved.
Oh, Ed is absolutely loving this because By default, he now has a total monopoly on the village water supply.
Right.
He thinks Bill is just lazy or gave up.
Right.
But Bill hasn't been sitting on a beach sipping margaritas. Bill went back to the city. He wrote a comprehensive business plan. He hired a legal team to create a corporate entity.
He is building a system.
Exactly. He pitched his idea to 4 wealthy investors to secure capital. He hired an experienced executive to handle the ground operations, and he returns to the village 6 months later with a massive construction crew.
And they build the pipeline.
Yes. Within 1 year, Bill's team built a high-volume stainless steel pipeline directly connecting the lake to the village square.
We really have to pause here and examine what actually happened. I mean, they were given the exact same task, but Ed built a job for himself. Bill built a system.
That is such a key distinction.
It really is. Ed used his own physical back. Bill used leverage, other people's money, and engineering.
And the moment that pipeline opens, it completely disrupts Ed's entire existence. Bill announces that his water is mathematically cleaner than Ed's because it travels through a closed pipe instead of open buckets.
Right.
Bill announces his water is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which Ed obviously couldn't match because he literally had to sleep and take weekends off.
And the pricing too, right?
Yeah, the final nail in the coffin. Bill charges 75% less per gallon than Ed.
Wow.
The village goes wild. They line up at Bill's pipeline. So put yourself in poor Ed's shoes for a second.
Yeah.
What does he do?
He probably just works harder.
Exactly. He does what we are all taught to do when things get tough. He lowers his price to try and compete. He buys 2 more buckets, puts lids on them so the water stays cleaner, and starts hauling 4 buckets at a time.
Just destroying his body.
He even pulls his 2 sons out of school to work the night shift. But when his sons go off to college, they tell him, Dad, we aren't coming back to haul buckets.
Oh, man.
So Ed ends up dealing with union representatives demanding higher wages and better working conditions for his replacement workers, and he is just working himself into an early grave just to pay his bills.
The tragedy of Ed is that his work ethic was truly flawless. His strategy was fatally flawed.
Yeah, that is a great way to put it.
While Ed was fighting union disputes, Bill realized something profound. If this specific village needs a steady supply of fresh water, then every other village in the region needs one too.
Oh, so he expands.
Exactly. Bill takes his exact same business plan, his exact same architectural drawings, and his exact same corporate structure, and he sells it globally. He scales the system.
Incredible.
He might only be making a fraction of a penny per bucket delivered, but his pipelines are delivering billions of buckets every single day to dozens of villages, whether Bill is physically awake or sleeping.
So Ed worked incredibly hard. Bill worked intelligently. But here is the multi-million-dollar question. Why is this specific parable the absolute bedrock of everything we're discussing today?
Because it reveals a deeply uncomfortable truth about our modern society. Our entire educational apparatus, our societal conditioning, and our cultural norms are explicitly designed to mass-produce Eds.
Really? Just mass-producing bucket haulers?
Yes. From kindergarten through college, we are trained to be highly efficient, obedient bucket haulers. We are graded on our individual ability to produce work. We are taught to trade our finite time and our physical or mental labor for a standardized paycheck.
Right.
But true financial freedom, the kind of wealth that allows you to step away from the machine and still generate income, it requires a total rejection of that training. It requires learning how to become a Bill. It requires learning the architecture of pipelines.
Which brings us right into the core framework of the source material. The author visualizes this economic reality as a cross, creating 4 separate boxes. This is the cash flow quadrant.
Right, the 4 distinct worlds.
Yeah, these 4 boxes represent the 4 distinct ways people legally generate income. Yeah. So let's start on the left side of this cross, because that is where the vast majority of the human population lives and dies. The top left box is the E for employee.
And the fundamental driver of the E quadrant is not ambition. It is actually the core emotion of fear.
Fear.
Yeah, when people in this quadrant think about their financial survival, their internal nervous system is just screaming for certainty. They actively seek out what they call a safe, secure job with excellent benefits.
Right, the classic corporate dream.
Exactly. The contractual agreement of a guaranteed paycheck every 2 weeks is literally the only thing that quells their baseline financial anxiety.
Wait, let me stop you there, because when I hear the word employee, I instantly think of, like, the teenager working the drive-thru or the entry-level data entry clerk.
Yeah.
But the source material makes it clear this isn't about income level, right? Like a CEO making $2 million a year is still an E.
Yes, absolutely. We have to separate the size of the paycheck from the actual mechanics of how it is generated.
Okay.
You could be the janitor sweeping the floors making minimum wage, or you could be the chief executive officer of the hospital pulling down a massive seven-figure salary with stock options.
They are both in the E quadrant.
Yes, because if you are trading your time for a W-2 paycheck from an employer, if someone else ultimately signs your check and has the power to fire you, you are in the E quadrant.
I see.
Your income is intrinsically capped by the number of hours you can physically stay awake and work, and you are entirely dependent on the system someone else built.
Okay, so right below the E, on the bottom left side of the cross, is the S quadrant. S stands for self-employed or small business owner. These are the rugged individualists, the do-it-yourselfers.
If the E quadrant is driven by the fear of instability, the S quadrant is fiercely driven by independence and a deep-seated perfectionism.
Right.
Their internal mantra is always, if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself.
Yeah, I know so many people like that.
They despised having a boss in the E quadrant, so they left to be their own boss. But they have this paralyzing inability to delegate tasks because they fundamentally believe nobody in the world can do the job quite as well as they can.
Which, I have to admit, makes total sense in certain scenarios. The author uses a great example in the book. If I need complex brain surgery, or if I need an expert mechanic to rebuild the transmission on a vintage sports car, I want an S quadrant person.
Oh, definitely.
I want an absolute perfectionist who refuses to delegate the tricky parts of my brain surgery to a first-year intern, right? I want them doing the work with their own hands.
And society absolutely needs people operating in the S quadrant for those high-stakes specialized roles. But we are analyzing this through the lens of building wealth and achieving freedom.
Right.
And from that perspective, the S quadrant is arguably the most treacherous and exhausting place to exist.
Why is that? I mean, I'm looking at doctors, lawyers, high-end consultants. They are making huge money. They are the boss. How is that a trap?
Because they suffer from a delusion. They think they own a business, but in reality, they just own a job. And usually it is a job where they work for the worst, most demanding boss imaginable, themselves. The fatal flaw of the S quadrant is that their entire income-generating system is 100% dependent on their physical presence. Let's apply what the author calls the vacation test.
Okay.
If an S takes a 6-week vacation to Europe, what happens to their income?
It just drops to absolute zero.
Yeah.
I mean, if the dentist isn't physically drilling teeth, the money stops flowing.
Precisely. They are the chief cook, the bottle washer, the marketing department, and the janitor. And here is the truly insidious part of the S quadrant trap. The better you get at your job, the more you are punished.
Punished for success.
Yes. If you are a brilliant lawyer, your phone rings constantly. You are in higher demand, which means you actually have to work harder, take on more stress, and log longer hours.
Wow.
Success in the S quadrant mathematically equates to a loss of free time. You essentially become a hostage to your own success.
Man, that is bleak. You work hard to become the best, and your reward is that you never see your family. Okay, so that is the left side, ENS. The overarching theme is that you are trading your finite time for money, either for a corporation or for yourself.
Exactly.
So we cross the center line to the right side of the quadrant. Top right is the B for business owner. Now, I really need you to clarify this because it sounds like we are just splitting hairs. How is a B fundamentally different from an S? Don't they both own businesses?
It is the most critical distinction in the entire framework. A true B quadrant individual does not own a job. A true B owns a functioning system.
A system.
Yes, and their primary skill is not executing the technical work themselves. In fact, they're often the least technically skilled person in the room.
Really?
Yeah, their skill is finding, hiring, and leading brilliant people. A B quadrant thinker actively seeks out the smartest E's and the most perfectionist S's and hires them to run the system for them.
That makes sense.
The ultimate test of a true B is the opposite of the S quadrant vacation test. Can a B leave their business for a solid year, completely cut off communication, and return to find the business running smoother and generating more profit than when they left?
So if the answer is no, and the business collapses without you, you are just an S who hired a few helpers.
Exactly.
But if the answer is yes, you are a true B.
Right. The B delegates everything except the absolute highest level thinking. Henry Ford didn't build the cars himself. He built the assembly line system and hired mechanics to turn the wrenches. The B focuses on expanding the pipeline, not carrying the water.
Which leaves us with the final quadrant on the bottom right, the I for investor. This is the promised land.
It really is. In the I quadrant, physical labor has been completely decoupled from income. You aren't working for money. Your money is working for you.
Wow.
This is the quadrant where true multi-generational wealth is accumulated and sustained. Money is converted into tangible assets, real estate, intellectual property, dividend-paying stocks, business equity.
Things that pay you while you sleep.
Exactly. They generate passive cash flow, regardless of whether you are playing golf, sleeping, or traveling the world.
Let me push back here for a second because this sounds incredibly rigid.
Mhm.
Am I permanently locked into one of these boxes based on the degree I got in college? Like if I spent 8 years going to medical school, am I just doomed to haul buckets on the left side forever?
It is a really common fear, but the answer is definitively no. Your profession has absolutely nothing to do with your quadrant.
Okay, good.
The quadrant categorizes the mechanism of how your income is generated, not the daily tasks of your profession.
Okay, the author gives an incredible analogy about a medical doctor that perfectly illustrates this. Let's walk through it.
Yeah.
A doctor can simultaneously exist in all four quadrants. Let's say she starts as an E. She gets hired on staff at a massive regional hospital. She works her shifts, the hospital handles the billing, and she collects a W-2 salary. She is an E. But then she gets tired of the hospital administration, telling her how much time she can spend with patients. So she moves to the S quadrant. She opens her own private practice. She hires a receptionist, leases an office, and sees patients on her own terms.
She is the boss now.
Right. But if she gets sick and can't see patients, the clinic makes $0. She is an S.
But then she shifts her thinking. She decides to move to the B quadrant. She still owns the clinic, but instead of seeing patients herself, she hires 3 other doctors who are now E's working for her to handle all the medical care.
Oh, I see.
She hires an office manager to handle the billing and the receptionist. Now she owns a healthcare system. She doesn't even need to be in the same state, and the clinic generates a profit for her.
And finally, she takes the excess profit generated by that B quadrant clinic system, and she moves into the I quadrant. She buys the physical commercial building that her clinic is leasing. She buys an apartment complex across town.
She is taking the cash flow from the system and buying assets that generate even more cash flow.
Exactly. She is still a medical doctor by trade, but she has operated in 4 completely different financial universes.
What is vital to understand here is that moving from the left side to the right side doesn't require going back to school to learn a new profession. It requires a fundamental rewiring of your core values.
Yeah.
It requires learning a completely new vocabulary. If you listen closely to how people speak, they will immediately reveal which quadrant their soul resides in.
Oh, that is fascinating. Give me an example.
An E will always say, I'm looking for a safe, secure job with great health benefits and a matched 401k. An S will proudly declare, my hourly rate is $200, and honestly, nobody else in town can do this as well as I can.
Right.
A D will say, I'm interviewing candidates for a new operations director to manage my logistics division. And an I doesn't talk about labor at all, and I asks, what is the internal rate of return on this asset, and what is the tax depreciation schedule?
They aren't even speaking the same language. And this brings us to a massive tension point in the source material. I'm looking at this framework, and the math is screamingly obvious. The right side of the quadrant, the B and the I, is where the freedom is, where the passive income is, where the infinite scaling exists.
It is the obvious choice.
If it's that obvious, why aren't we all just marching over to the right side right now? Why do so many incredibly smart, educated people stubbornly anchor themselves to the left side?
Because doing so requires fighting against a lifetime of profound societal programming. From the moment we are born, we are explicitly conditioned to prioritize the illusion of security over the reality of freedom.
This tension is perfectly personified in the central narrative of the author's life, the tale of his 2 father figures. He had a poor dad who was his actual biological father. And we have to be clear, poor dad wasn't some lazy guy on the couch.
No, not at all.
He was fiercely intelligent. He had a PhD. He climbed the ranks of academia to become the superintendent of education for the entire state of Hawaii. He was the definition of an academic success story, but he constantly, relentlessly struggled with money.
Because poor dad's entire worldview, his entire operating system, was hopelessly anchored in the E quadrant. His advice to his son was the standard societal script. Go to a good school, get excellent grades, and find a safe, secure job with a strong pension.
Right.
But the brutal, tragic irony of poor dad's life was that the more successful he became in the E quadrant, the harder he triggered the trap.
Let's break down the math of that trap, because this is where the middle class gets absolutely slaughtered.
Yeah.
Every time poor dad did a great job, he got a promotion and a pay raise. Let's say his salary bumped from $100,000 to $130,000.
He is thrilled.
Right, he is thrilled. But that raise immediately pushed him into a higher progressive tax bracket. So the government takes a massive chunk before he ever sees a dime. Then he takes his new net income to his accountant, and what does the S-Quadrant accountant tell him?
Buy a bigger house.
Exactly. The accountant says, you have a high tax burden. You need a bigger tax write-off. Go buy a bigger house so you can deduct the mortgage interest.
It is the classic left side cycle of doom. Gross income comes in. The government takes their taxes first. The remaining net income goes to pay living expenses. And the rest goes to service the massive debt of the new, larger house, which is a liability that takes money out of his pocket, not an asset.
Yeah.
Poor dad is making a larger gross salary, but he has more debt, higher taxes, and higher carrying costs. He is forced to work even longer hours just to service the lifestyle, meaning he sees his family less.
And it ends badly for him, doesn't it?
It does. Eventually, poor dad decides to run for political office against his boss, the governor. He loses the election. Because he is an employee, his boss fires him, blacklists him from government work, and overnight, his safe, secure world completely evaporates. He has zero skills on the right side of the quadrant to fall back on. He dies with nothing but unpaid bills.
Wow. Now contrast that with his rich dad, who was actually his best friend's father. This man was a high school dropout. He had zero formal academic pedigree, no PhD, but he focused exclusively, obsessively on the right side of the quadrant.
He built systems.
Right, he built small business systems, he took the profits and bought commercial real estate. He eventually grew his holdings to become one of the wealthiest private individuals in Hawaii. And the most striking difference between the two men wasn't the size of their bank accounts, it was their relationship with time.
Exactly.
As Rich Dad became wealthier, he actually had more free time to sit with his son and the author, teaching them about money, because his B quadrant systems and I quadrant assets were doing the heavy lifting while he literally drank coffee.
It perfectly highlights the paradox of success on the left. The better you do as an E or an S, the harder you are forced to work. Furthermore, and this is a reality most people completely refuse to confront, employees are mathematically the most heavily taxed group of human beings in existence.
Really? The most heavily taxed?
Yes. If you are a high-earning W-2 employee, you are essentially a 50-50 silent partner with the government. They take their cut of your labor before the money ever hits your checking account. You have absolutely no control over it.
Whereas on the right side, the tax code works entirely differently.
Because the tax code is not just a mechanism to raise revenue, it is actually a behavioral engineering tool used by the government.
What do you mean by that?
The government wants specific things to happen in the economy. They want people to build businesses that provide jobs, which is the B quadrant. They want people to build housing, explore for energy, and provide capital for innovation, which is the I quadrant.
Okay, I see.
Because the government is highly inefficient at doing these things themselves, they offer massive legal tax incentives to anyone who does it for them. A B quadrant business owner earns gross income, spends that money on business expenses to grow the system, and is only taxed on the net remaining profit.
Oh, wow.
An E quadrant worker earns gross income, is immediately taxed on it, and has to try and survive on the net. It is a completely inverted mathematical formula.
Okay, I hear that, but surely the left side provides security for retirement, right? I mean, our grandparents worked 30 years at the factory and retired comfortably.
That was true during the industrial age. But we experienced a seismic historical shift moving from the industrial age to the information age, and most of the population didn't even notice the rules changed.
What changed?
In the industrial age, the gold standard for an employee was the defined benefit pension plan. You gave a massive corporation 30 years of your physical loyalty, and they contractually guaranteed you a steady paycheck for the rest of your natural life. The company bore the risk of funding that retirement.
But those pensions are essentially extinct today, outside of a few government sectors.
Exactly. They have been almost entirely replaced by defined contribution plans, the most famous, of course, being the 401k. This seemingly innocuous accounting change shifted the entire burden of financial risk from the massive corporation directly onto the fragile shoulders of the individual employee.
And the source material has an absolutely blistering critique of the 401k system. The author argues that it might actually be the most dangerous way to invest for retirement. I want to look at the numbers here because my jaw honestly hit the floor. Let's talk about fees. Most people look at their 401k statement, see an annual management fee of maybe 1% or 1.5% and think, well, that's nothing. I keep 99%.
That is a fundamental misunderstanding of compounding interest. Over the 30 or 40-year lifespan of a 401k, that 1.5% fee isn't just a one-time charge.
Right.
It is skimming 1.5% off the total balance every single year, which means you lose the compounding growth of that money over decades.
That adds up fast.
The author cites studies showing that over a lifetime, fees can devour up to 80% of the profits generated by the underlying assets. The investor is left with a fraction of what their money actually earned.
80%.
Yes. But who takes 100% of the risk if the stock market crashes? The employee. The mutual fund managers still collect their management fees whether the market is up 30% or down 30%.
It gets worse.
Yeah.
When you finally reach age 65 and go to withdraw that money you've been painfully saving for decades, how is it taxed? It isn't taxed at the much lower preferential long-term capital gains rate. It is taxed as ordinary earned income, which is the highest possible tax rate in the code.
Yeah, it's brutal.
So you took all the risk, you paid the exorbitant hidden fees, and now the government hits you with the highest tax bracket upon withdrawal.
Not to mention the absolute lack of insurance. If you buy a $2 million apartment building in the I quadrant, you immediately buy a hazard insurance policy. If the building burns to the ground, the insurance company writes you a check to rebuild it. Your asset is protected. But if you have $2 million sitting in a 401k mutual fund and a global financial crisis hits the year before you plan to retire, wiping out 50% of the market, well, there is no insurance policy for that. Your money is simply gone. You have to go back to work.
It is like relying on a transportation system where you are riding shotgun in a race car with no seatbelts, no airbags, and you have absolutely no access to the steering wheel or the brakes.
That is a great analogy.
If the car crashes, you go straight through the windshield and lose your entire life savings. But the driver, the Wall Street fund manager, still gets a massive bonus for driving the car.
Exactly.
So let me ask you this, because this completely flips my worldview upside down. We are constantly told that quitting your job and starting a business is incredibly risky, and that putting 10% of your paycheck in a target date mutual fund is the safe, responsible thing to do.
Is it really riskier to be an entrepreneur than to trust a 401k system? If we logically analyze the mechanics, the definition of risk is completely inverted. The author argues that relying on a single, solitary source of income, a W-2 job where you can be fired on a Tuesday for no reason, and anchoring your entire retirement to a financial plan completely at the mercy of global market fluctuations you cannot control is the absolute height of reckless risk.
Wow.
People on the left side of the quadrant pay for the privilege of taking risks. They pay exorbitant premiums for health insurance. They pay hidden fees to fund managers. They absorb the total risk of corporate layoffs.
And the right side.
People on the right side of the quadrant get paid to take risks. By building an operational system or investing capital intelligently, they are managing risk and reaping the massive financial rewards for doing so.
Okay, the math is undeniable.
Yeah.
I am completely sold. The right side has the tax advantages, the infinite scalability, the time freedom, and paradoxically, the actual control over risk.
It does.
So again, I ask the obvious question. If I am listening to this on my way to my cubicle, why don't I just quit my job today, march over to the right side, and buy a business?
Because simply changing your job title does not change your quadrant. Crossing from the left side of the cash flow quadrant to the right side requires a traumatic, fundamental shift in your core identity.
Identity.
Yes. It requires developing an entirely different emotional intelligence. You cannot just put on a new suit. You are essentially attempting to mutate from a caterpillar into a butterfly. And the cocoon phase is agonizing.
Which brings us to the psychological meat of this audiobook summary. The author introduces a conceptual framework here that explains why so many people fail when they try to start a business.
Yeah.
It is the formula B, do, have.
Right. Most people in the middle class operate this formula entirely in reverse. They look at the wealthy and think, if I just have a lot of money, I can finally do what rich people do, like buy apartment buildings or take long vacations, and then I will be a successful, wealthy person.
That is exactly how I used to think.
Or they read a book on real estate, try to skip the internal change, and jump straight to do. They go out and try to buy a distressed property without changing who they be.
And what happened?
If you maintain the fearful, risk-averse E-quadrant mindset, but try to operate a complex B quadrant real estate system, you will panic at the first sign of trouble. The moment a tenant doesn't pay rent, your E quadrant brain will scream danger, run away, seek security, and you will sell the property at a massive loss and run back to the safety of a cubicle.
It is the difference between academic IQ and emotional IQ. In the school system, which is explicitly designed to train the left side of the quadrant, you are severely punished for making mistakes. The A student is the one who memorizes the established rules, colors inside the lines, and never fails a test.
Right, but the real world doesn't work that way.
No. In the messy, chaotic, real world of the B and I quadrants, the people who succeed are the ones who make the most mistakes, analyze the failure, and adapt. Thomas Edison didn't fail 1,000 times. He successfully discovered 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. But a left-side thinker is emotionally paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake, especially if that mistake involves losing money.
And that deep-seated emotional fear literally dictates the vocabulary they use. Words are not just sounds. Words shape our neurological reality.
Yeah.
When an E-quadrant person hears the word risk, their amygdala fires, their heart rate increases, and they feel terror. They want to hide. When an I-quadrant person hears the exact same word, risk, they feel a surge of excitement. They see a puzzle to be solved and an opportunity to manage that risk for a disproportionate reward.
It's totally opposite.
When a left-side thinker sees a luxury car or a great investment opportunity, their brain automatically says, I can't afford it. That statement is a period. It shuts down the brain. It lets them off the hook so they don't have to think.
But the wealthy use a question instead. They ask, how can I afford it? That opens up the brain. It forces the subconscious to start searching for creative solutions, to look for OPM, other people's money, to make the deal happen.
Exactly. The mindset difference is stark, and it is perfectly, brutally illustrated by a story the author shares from 1985.
Yes, let's dig into this because honestly, when I first read this part, I thought they were crazy. In 1985, the author and his wife were completely out of money. Their previous business had failed, they had maxed out their credit cards, and they were literally homeless, sleeping in an old, beat-up brown Toyota in San Diego.
Just a terrible situation.
Right. Now, put yourself in that Toyota, you read that and think, wait a minute. If these guys are so smart, if they know so much about the B and I quadrants, why are they sleeping in a car? They both had college degrees, they had great resumes. Just go down to the local corporation, hand in your resume, get a safe, secure E-quadrant job, get an apartment, and stop being homeless.
It sounds like the logical, rational thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But what is fascinating is that their homelessness was, in a very real strategic sense, a choice. It was a terribly painful choice. But they refused to fall back into the E-quadrant.
Why? Why suffer like that?
Because they knew the psychological power of the paycheck. They knew that if they gave in to their fear, if they accepted the comforting, warm blanket of a guaranteed biweekly paycheck, they would become instantly addicted to it again. The comfort would numb their ambition. They would never build their B quadrant systems.
They were deliberately forcing themselves through the painful cocoon phase. They were choosing to endure extreme, humiliating, short-term pain. Using public restrooms, hiding their situation from their friends, all to guarantee their long-term freedom on the right side of the quadrant. They realized that passion builds businesses, while fear builds a prison. And eventually they pushed through, built their systems, and became multimillionaires. But enduring homelessness just to break the psychological addiction to a paycheck, that is a level of commitment to the B to have process that 99% of the population simply cannot stomach.
Which is why 99% of the population stays on the left side. But let's assume you, the listener, are ready. You are driving to work right now listening to this and you say, I'm in, I will do the emotional work, I will change my vocabulary, I want to cross the bridge from the E or S quadrant over to the B quadrant. How do you actually practically execute that crossing?
That brings us to the architectural plans. The source material details 3 specific types of business systems that act as the physical vehicles to cross from the left side to the right side.
But before we lay out those 3 bridges, we have to revisit a vital analogy to test if your mindset has actually shifted. The ultimate litmus test of whether you are ready to build a system is the hamburger question.
Oh, I love this part. It completely shatters the S-quadrant ego.
Yeah.
You walk up to almost anyone and ask, can you personally cook a better, tastier hamburger than McDonald's?
Yeah, what do they say?
Almost universally, people roll their eyes and say, of course I can. McDonald's burgers are mediocre, mass-produced garbage. My backyard burgers are incredible. Then you hit them with a follow-up question. Okay, can you personally build a better business system than McDonald's?
And the answer is always a stunned silence, followed by no. Left side thinkers, especially S quadrant perfectionists, obsess over the product. They think if I just bake a more delicious cupcake, or write a more elegant software code, or offer a better consulting service, the world will beat a path to my door and I will be rich.
They're entirely focused on the widget.
But right-side thinkers, the B quadrant builders, don't care about the widget. They obsess over the system that delivers the widget. McDonald's doesn't have the best burger. They have the best meat delivery logistics, the best global real estate acquisition strategy, the best marketing psychology, and most importantly, a standardized operational training system so flawless that a distracted 16-year-old high school kid can run the fry machine perfectly every single time in 100 different countries.
That is incredible when you think about it.
That is a system. If you want to survive in the B quadrant, you have to stop obsessing over cooking the perfect burger and start obsessing over building the machinery.
Okay, so with that system-first mindset, what are the three bridges? Bridge number one is the traditional C corporation. This is the path most people think of. You have an idea in your garage and you build your own system from scratch.
This is the path that offers the highest potential reward, but it is also the most incredibly labor-intensive, capital-intensive, and risky route you can possibly take. You are attempting to invent a completely novel operational system while simultaneously managing the volatile human beings executing that untested system.
Yeah, that sounds impossible.
You are essentially trying to build the airplane while you are already in free fall. The statistical failure rate here is astronomically high. Even the author notes he failed spectacularly 3 times, losing millions of dollars and sleeping in a car before he successfully built a C Corp system that stabilized. It requires a tremendous amount of financial stamina and emotional resilience.
Which makes bridge number two look very appealing. Bridge number two is the franchise model. Here, you aren't inventing the airplane. You are literally just buying a proven, flight-tested system.
Think of the franchise model as paying a premium to take the system design risk completely off the table. Whether it is a McDonald's, a UPS store, or a boutique fitness gym, the system has already been perfected through years of trial and error. The marketing is done, the supply chain is established, the employee handbooks are written.
So you just run it.
Right. Your only job as the B quadrant owner is to manage the people who are operating the system. However, there is a massive catch that traps a lot of people.
A huge catch. No rebels allowed. If you are secretly an S-quadrant thinker who loves doing things your own way, buying a franchise will be an absolute psychological nightmare for you. You have to follow their corporate operations manual to the exact letter.
You can't change anything.
Nothing. If the manual says the bathroom floor must be mopped at exactly 9:00 p.m. using 3 ounces of a specific blue chemical, you cannot decide to mop it at 9:15 with a green chemical because you think it smells better. If you do, you lose your franchise license. You are buying a system, which means you must submit your ego to the system.
Which brings us to the third bridge. And this one often generates the most visceral, negative reaction: network marketing.
Okay, I'm going to push back incredibly hard here.
Yeah.
Because the second I read the words network marketing or multi-level marketing in the source material, every alarm bell in my head went off.
Sure, that's not.
We all know someone who got roped into one of these. Isn't this just a thinly veiled pyramid scheme where you guilt trip your high school friends on Facebook into buying overpriced vitamin shakes or essential oils until everyone blocks your number? Why in the world does the author dedicate so much time defending this model as a legitimate bridge to the B quadrant?
It is a completely fair and very common reaction. And to be clear, the author neutrally reports that he initially had the exact same skepticism. He thought it was a scam for desperate people. But after he spent time deeply researching the mechanics of the best, most reputable companies in the industry, his perspective shifted entirely. The realization he came to is that the true value of a strong network marketing company isn't the vitamin shake or the skin cream they are selling.
Then what is it?
The true product is the education.
Education. How does annoying my neighbors equate to a business school?
Look at the barriers to entry. For a C Corp, you need millions in venture capital. For a McDonald's franchise, you need $1 million in liquid cash. For a network marketing company, the entry fee is often just a couple of $100s.
True, it is very cheap to start.
Right. And for that microscopic risk, you are instantly plugged into a completely automated global business system. The corporate office handles the complex accounting, the global distribution logistics, the legal compliance, and the web hosting. You don't have to invent the system.
Okay, I see the system part.
But more importantly, the truly excellent network marketing organizations function as a real-world, trial-by-fire business school for people transitioning from the left side to the right side of the quadrant.
What are they actually teaching you, though, besides how to memorize a sales script?
They teach you the two most critical, painful skills required to survive as a B quadrant entrepreneur: how to handle brutal rejection and how to lead human beings.
Oh, wow.
Think about it. On the left side, as an employee, we are terrified of what other people think of us. We want to fit in. We want approval. Network marketing forces you to go out and face rejection face to face daily. It forces you to overcome your paralyzing fear of hearing the word no. It builds a thick, protective callus over your fragile ego.
That makes a lot of sense.
And once you learn to sell, it forces you to learn how to communicate, inspire, and lead a team of volunteers to do the same. It provides the exact emotional and personal development training needed to survive the B quadrant with virtually zero financial risk upfront.
So you were saying it is essentially an emotional training ground. You pay $200 to learn how to not care when people laugh at you. Put that way, it actually makes a lot of sense as a transitional step. So regardless of the bridge you choose, whether you bleed for a C-Corp, buy a franchise, or grind through network marketing, the ultimate goal is to get a system up and running that generates consistent cash flow without your daily physical labor.
Yes, that is the goal.
Once you have that cash flow, or even if you are just a highly disciplined E-quadrant employee diligently saving your surplus income, you eventually have to deal with the final boss, the I-quadrant, the investor quadrant.
Because the I quadrant is the only place where money is multiplied without human labor, converting cash into true multi-generational wealth. But the I quadrant is not a monolith. Just like there are 4 different quadrants, there are different levels of sophistication within the investor quadrant itself. The source material breaks this down into 5 distinct levels.
Let's walk through these 5 levels so you, listening right now, can honestly evaluate exactly where you currently stand. Level 1, the zero financial intelligence level.
This is sadly where a massive, overwhelming portion of the global population resides. These individuals have absolutely nothing to invest. Their expenses perfectly match or exceed their income. And what is terrifying is that many people at level 1 actually make a phenomenal income. Think of the specialized S-quadrant doctor pulling in $400,000 a year, but who spends $450,000 a year. They operate entirely on bad, high-interest consumer debt.
So they look rich, but they aren't.
Exactly. They have beautiful leased luxury cars, a massive mortgage on a McMansion, and designer clothes, but their actual net worth is negative. They are one medical emergency or one missed paycheck away from total catastrophic bankruptcy.
It is all a facade. Okay, level 2, the savers are losers level. Now, I have to stop you again because this feels completely counterintuitive to everything we are taught. We are all told from childhood that saving money in a piggy bank or a savings account is the smart, responsible, conservative thing to do. How can savers possibly be losers?
To understand this, we require a very brief lesson in macroeconomic history. In 1971, President Richard Nixon made a seemingly arcane executive decision. He took the US dollar completely off the gold standard. Before 1971, a paper dollar was a claim check tied to a physical, tangible asset, gold, sitting in a vault. The government could not simply print more paper money than they had gold. But after 1971, fiat currency was born. Money was backed by nothing but the full faith and credit of the government. It essentially became an instrument of infinite debt.
Meaning the central banks could just press a button on a computer and print trillions of new dollars out of thin air whenever they want.
Precisely. And the law of supply and demand dictates that when the government drastically increases the supply of dollars, the purchasing power of every individual dollar plummets. This invisible tax is called inflation. Let's do the devastating math on saving.
Let's hear it.
Let's say you are a responsible level 2 investor. You work hard, you pay your taxes, and you put $100,000 into a high-yield savings account earning 2% interest. At the end of the year, you feel great because the bank paid you $2,000. But the government expanded the money supply, and real inflation on housing, food, and energy ran at 7%.
Oh, I see where this is going.
It now costs you $107,000 to buy the exact same goods that cost $100,000 last year. Your account grew to $102,000, but the cost of living grew to $107,000. You didn't make money. You silently and visibly lost $5,000 of purchasing power while your money rotted in the bank vault. Therefore, in a modern fiat currency economy, saving cash is mathematically guaranteed to impoverish you over a long enough timeline.
That is horrifying. Okay, so if stuffing cash in a mattress or a bank is bad, people inevitably jump to level 3, the I'm too busy level. This feels like the vast majority of the upper middle class.
It is. These are intelligent, educated people who know they need to invest to beat inflation, but they are too busy with their demanding E-quadrant careers and raising their kids to actually learn the mechanics of investing, so they take the path of least
They
resistance.
hand it over to someone else.
Exactly. They hand their money over to an expert, a financial advisor, a 401k manager, a mutual fund, and just cross their fingers and hope for the best.
And what is the fundamental danger of the level 3 approach?
The danger is a total abdication of responsibility, which leads to a total lack of education. When the macroeconomy is booming and their mutual fund goes up 20%, they think they're financial geniuses. But when the inevitable market crash happens and wipes out half their retirement portfolio in a week, they have no idea why it happened.
Yeah, they just panic.
They learn absolutely nothing from the loss except how to complain and blame the stock market, the president, or their advisor. They have zero control over their financial destiny.
Which brings us to level 4, the I'm a professional level.
Hmm.
These are the aggressive do-it-yourselfers in the investing world. These are the S-quadrant investors.
They look at the level 3 advisors, realize they're getting gouged on fees, and decide they don't trust anyone else. So they take control, they open a brokerage account and day trade their own stocks. Or they buy a dilapidated duplex across town, spend their weekends fixing the toilets themselves, and act as the landlord.
At least they are trying.
They are definitely more engaged, educated, and proactive than level 3, but their fatal limitation is scale. Because they are trapped in the S-quadrant mentality of do-it-yourself, they usually operate completely solo, and they almost exclusively invest using their own finite pool of personal savings. Their wealth accumulation is severely artificially capped by their own personal capital and their own physical time.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the absolute pinnacle.
Yeah.
Level 5, the capitalist. What makes a level 5 investor so fundamentally different from a level 4 professional?
The capitalist operates in a completely different stratosphere because they utilize two massive exponential levers, OPM and OPT, other people's money and other people's time.
Leverage.
Yes, a level 5 investor rarely uses their own money to acquire assets. Instead, they create immense value out of thin air by building a successful B-quadrant system, and then they leverage that system's credibility to raise millions of dollars from banks or by syndicating funds from level 3 investors who are desperate for a return.
So they aren't working alone.
Never. They do not operate solo. They invest as a corporate team, bringing in the absolute best tax attorneys, forensic accountants, and real estate brokers to execute complex deals.
This is where the game of Monopoly analogy comes in so beautifully to demystify what capitalists actually do. We all played Monopoly as kids. What is the fundamental winning strategy to crush your family in Monopoly?
You buy 4 greenhouses and you trade them in for 1 red hotel.
Exactly. It is not a secret formula. You buy a small property, you put a little greenhouse on it, which increases the rental cash flow when someone lands on it. You use that cash flow to buy a few more greenhouses. Once you have 4 greenhouses, you trade them in for a massive red hotel that generates catastrophic cash flow against your opponents.
That is exactly how it works in real life.
The author argues that being a level 5 capitalist isn't some mystical, arcane art reserved for Wall Street elites. It is literally just playing the game of Monopoly in real life. Let's do the math on a level 5 real estate deal using OPM.
Let's hear it.
You find a $1 million apartment building that is mismanaged. You don't use $1 million of your own savings. You go to a commercial bank and borrow $800,000. You raise the remaining $200,000 from a group of level 3 investors by offering them an 8% return. You put in 0 of your own money. You hire a B-quadrant property management company to deal with the toilets and the tenants. The tenants pay their rent, which covers the bank debt, and the investor returns. The tax code allows you to depreciate the building, shielding your remaining cash flow from taxes. You just acquired a $1 million cash flowing asset using other people's money and other people's time, creating wealth entirely out of thin air. That is a level 5 capitalist.
It is the ultimate manifestation of financial intelligence. But remember, the author strongly cautions the reader. You should never try to jump straight from being a level 1 employee to a level 5 capitalist. The safest, most sustainable path is to learn the excruciating skills of the B quadrant first. Learn how to build systems and lead people, and then take that hardened education into the I quadrant.
Okay, we have covered an immense amount of theoretical ground. We've talked about the psychology of the quadrants, the illusion of the 401k, the mindset shift of the homeless author, the 3 bridges and the 5 levels of investors. But let's bring this down to earth. If you're listening to this right now, tomorrow's Monday morning, you still have to drive to your E-quadrant job, you still have bills to pay. What do you actually do with all this information? This brings us to the actionable, step-by-step guide to begin transitioning your life safely.
And before we detail these specific steps, the overarching philosophy of the right side of the quadrant must be reiterated. Action beats inaction.
Right.
Analysis paralysis is the mortal enemy of the left side thinker. You cannot read your way to wealth. You learn by doing, and yes, you learn by making painful mistakes.
Let's distill these 7 steps down so you can actually start executing. Step 1, mind your own business. What does that practically mean?
From the day we are hired, we are conditioned to mind our employer's business. We work tirelessly to increase their stock price and make the shareholders rich. Minding your own business means taking radical control of your personal financial statements.
Okay.
You need to sit down at your kitchen table with a piece of paper and know exactly, to the penny, what your monthly income, expenses, assets, and liabilities are.
And we have to clarify assets versus liabilities here, because people get this wrong all the time. Is my primary residence, the house I live in, an asset?
Does it put money in your pocket every month or take money out? A primary residence requires mortgage payments, property taxes, a new roof, and lawn maintenance. It takes money out of your pocket. Under this framework, your house is a liability.
Wow.
An asset is a rental property or a dividend stock that deposits cash into your checking account every month. Minding your business means acquiring things that feed you, not things that eat your wealth.
Which leads right into step 2, control your cash flow.
If you do not ruthlessly control your cash flow, earning a higher salary won't save you. You will simply scale up your lifestyle and buy more expensive liabilities. You must implement the golden rule. Pay yourself first.
What does that look like?
Before you pay the electric bill, before you pay the mortgage, before you buy groceries, you automatically route a percentage of your income specifically into an investment account to buy assets. If you pay everyone else first, there is never anything left for you. You have to force the constraint.
That takes serious, painful discipline. Step 3, know the difference between risk and risky.
This goes back to our 401k discussion. Blindly handing 10% of your paycheck to a mutual fund manager whose name you don't know, hoping the market doesn't crash when you're 64, is risky.
Right.
Learning how to read a corporate financial statement, understanding local zoning laws, and acquiring a cash-flowing duplex that you control that is managing risk. Education eliminates the risky part of investing.
Step 4, decide what kind of investor you want to be. And the advice here goes against the grain. We are always told to diversify.
Stop diversifying blindly like the level 3 investors do. The ultra-wealthy do not diversify. They hyper-focus. Warren Buffett doesn't buy a little bit of everything. He buys massive stakes in a few companies he understands intimately.
Become an expert.
Exactly. Become an absolute, undeniable expert at solving one specific type of financial problem, whether that is finding wildly undervalued tech startups or acquiring distressed 50-unit apartment buildings. And once you become the expert, level 3 investors will practically throw their money at you to invest for them.
Step 5 is critical to avoiding ruin. Seek mentors. And the author draws a razor-sharp, vital distinction here between an advisor and a mentor.
This cannot be overstated. An advisor is someone who gets paid to tell you what to do, but they are almost always operating in the S or E quadrant themselves. The stockbroker gets their commission whether your portfolio goes up or down.
Right.
A mentor is someone who has actually successfully done the exact specific thing you are trying to do and has the scars to prove it. If you want to build a B quadrant business, do not take business advice from a brilliant S quadrant accountant who sells their time by the hour. Find a B quadrant owner who has built a massive pipeline and ask them for guidance.
Step 6, make disappointment your strength.
You are going to fail. Accept it now. If you are going to invest in real estate for the first time, do not bet your entire life savings and take out a second mortgage to buy a massive commercial complex for your first deal.
That would be a disaster.
Start small. Buy a cheap condo. Make your inevitable, stupid mistakes when the stakes are low. Learn the painful lessons, analyze what went wrong without blaming others, and use that disappointment as the intellectual foundation for the next, slightly bigger deal.
And finally, step 7, the power of faith. Trust yourself. The biggest obstacle to crossing the quadrant isn't the macroeconomy or interest rates or the stock market. It is the tiny, terrified voice of doubt in your own head telling you to just play it safe, to just stay in the bucket hauling line because it is what everyone else is doing.
It is entirely an internal battle.
I know this can sound incredibly overwhelming. You look at all the math, the taxes, the system building, and you think, I am exhausted just from commuting. Where do I even start tomorrow without having a panic attack? I love the analogy the author uses here. How do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
Right.
Dream massive. Set that crazy, audacious, long-term goal to become a level 5 capitalist, but underachieve daily. Take microscopic, manageable, tiny baby steps every single day. Tomorrow, don't buy a business. Just read one chapter of a book on financial statements.
Right.
The next day, look at one single investment property online and run the math. The next week, go to one local real estate networking meeting just to sit in the back row and listen to the vocabulary they use. Small steps build the bridge.
The transition from caterpillar to butterfly does not happen over a weekend. It is a fundamental, lifelong rewiring of your mental, emotional, and mathematical relationship with money and security.
Okay, we have covered an immense amount of ground today. Let's recap the harsh, beautiful core message of this deep dive. If you are an employee, your boss's job is not to make you wealthy. Your boss's job is to give you just enough of a paycheck so that you can pay your bills and come back to work on Monday. It is your job to make yourself wealthy.
Whether you ultimately choose to remain on the left side as a highly paid employee or a specialized self-employed professional, or you decide to endure the cocoon and brave the crossing to the right side as a business system owner or a capitalist, understanding the hidden rules of these 4 quadrants gives you back your agency. It gives you the power to consciously, mathematically choose between the comforting illusion of security and the demanding reality of true freedom.
It is all about choosing what you want your daily existence to look like. And that brings us to our final provocative thought for this deep dive. Something for you to deeply consider as you drive the rest of the way to work or cook dinner tonight. We universally measure wealth in terms of dollars. We ask, how many millions do you have in your 401k? But the author challenges that metric entirely.
He argues that true wealth is not measured in dollars, euros, or yen at all. Wealth is measured purely in time. The ultimate binary diagnostic test of your current financial health is this. If you stopped physically working today, if you called your boss, quit, and never clocked in or answered a client email ever again, how many days could you survive and maintain your current standard of living?
Is it a week? Is it a month before the credit cards max out? Could you survive 10 years? Or could you survive indefinitely because your assets pay for your life?
That exact number of days is your true wealth. Because on the right side of the quadrant, you use money to buy back your finite time on Earth. On the left side of the quadrant, you are forced to sell your irreplaceable time just to buy money.
If you want a clear picture of your financial health, don't look at your paycheck. Look at your time. Stop hauling buckets. Start planning your pipeline. If you enjoyed this audiobook deep dive, make sure to subscribe to read less, like this video, and share it with your friends. See you in the next powerful audiobook summary.